I like Notre Dame, but to me, the number 5 ranking feels like a false ranking, so they could pump up the TV for it. Number 2 versus number 5. I don't think that number 5 ranking is true, but you've got the second youngest head coach of a football school, a major power, and Marcus Freeman leading Notre Dame. This is the time of year we were talking off air, and you hit the nail right on the head of something I want to talk about too. Is it's so hard when you've got a quarterback who leaves and either transfers or goes to the NFL, and then you've got to figure out what this new team is. And so that's why early on in these early games, I'll bet the games, but I don't bet them as heavy as I would, a week from now or 2 weeks from now, because I want to see what this new quarterback or is going to do with this football team. And that's one of the things that you've got to look at when it comes to Notre Dame. Ohio State returns C.J. Stroud, who could be the best quarterback in America. I think Notre Dame felt slighted by the 17.5 point difference, but Notre Dame surprises you. There's times when Ohio State plays like world beaters, and there's times like a couple years ago when they went into Purdue and got shellacked. So I bet it earlier this week before the point spread adjusted. I took Notre Dame and I took the points because that seems like a lot of points for a top 10 ranked team to be getting this early on.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. The coach left and never won. He never won. I mean, he had teams that were there twice, right? And they got whacked both times when they got to the Final Four.
A lot of that has to do a lot of times because of their private NBC deal. A lot of times it has to do with how well they travel. And, they're a nationally known name. And they're a team that a lot of people like to see get whooped on, as well as Ohio State fans. Ohio State fans are the most obnoxious people that I know, because if you don't refer to it as the Ohio State University, they want to correct you. Ohio State's going to be good again this year. They're good every year. They have a lot of the top players in the country. But again, 17.5 points early on seems like a lot for a team. Notre Dame should probably be a top 10 team. I don't know about number 5, but a top 10 team. So that's why I took Notre Dame in the points in this one. It's a crapshoot early on because you don't know what you're going to get from Notre Dame at quarterback or with some of their major players going to the NFL. So that's why I took the Irish, and I'll take the points and keep my fingers crossed come Saturday night.
Yeah, field goal game and you're golden, right?
Heck, two touchdown game. I'm golden. So.
Oregon at Georgia. They're trying to repeat. Now they lost their whole team. And I had a conversation with somebody about that, Mo. You mentioned it earlier with the first game. When teams lose a lot of players, sometimes, it's tough. But other times they were sitting there with second and third stringers that could start in almost every other team in their conference. So the first couple of weeks might be a little sketchy, but if they start rolling, watch out.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you see a ton of guys transfer every year from Alabama, from Georgia, from Ohio State, because they've got 5-star recruits sitting on the bench. I agree that that Georgia's loaded and they're reloaded and ready to go. But again, it's just I want to see what the chemistry is like early on. That's why these first week games always scare me. Oregon, they're a team that could be in transition as well. They along with Washington, met with the Big Ten this week, trying to get their school into the Big Ten as they see the Pac-12 falling apart in front of their eyes. Oregon's been a team that's been up and down. They haven't played a lot of good competition. There's not a lot of great Pac-12 competition lately. So it's worrisome. We've seen them the last couple of years in big games at neutral sites come up on the losing end. Georgia, repeat national champions. I can't see there's any way that Kirby Smart does not have this team ready to play and to win this football game by a sizable margin. I'm taking Georgia in this football game.
They got to win by 21, but the question is, how many points are they going to give up? Remember last year, they averaged like 9 points or 7, or they actually it was under 7, and then they gave up a lot of points, I think, in the last game. But they were at a stretch where they were under 7 for the points allowed. How many games you going to win if you're not scoring 7 points?
Well, yeah, and it's funny because you saw so many sports writers stating that the Heisman Trophy should be given to the entire defensive line. They've got some hosses back there again this year. Obviously the number 1 pick in the NFL draft was a defensive player from Georgia. They had 3 or 4 go off of that team that got drafted in the first couple rounds. They're going to be a good team. The other cool thing to watch for is when you see these big games early on from Oregon, the uniforms should be entirely off the chain. I love the different uniforms that Oregon busts out for these type of games. So, that'll be fun to see as well. But I think this is a game that Georgia can take handily. I think that they're too big on the defensive line for Oregon to really get something going.
Oh, they do rep those uniforms well. Of course, when you got a guy like Phil Nike just pumping up the checks,
Right.
what are you going to do?